Okay, hello to everybody. We are going to go on this webinar on forestry and forest biodiversity. We have kept now 3 lectures, and now is the last, I hope also not least, and 4th part. And this all belongs to Kolarctic CBC project on forestry, and it's ruled by in Finnish Association of for Nature Conservation Lapland in Finland, and in Sweden it is ruled by Skogsstyrelsen Norrbotten, and in Russia, in northwest Russia, it is led by WWF of Arkangel area. And on program we have today first Hillevi Eriksson from Sweden, and she's title is Some Ideas on Forest Biodiversity Protection in a Changing Climate in Sweden. And after Hillevi, we have a comment from Raisa Mäkipää from Natural Research Institute of Finland. And the second lecture we will have Raisa's climate change mitigation potential of land use sector and management of peatland forests, and it is started after 1 hour. But first we will have Hillevi Eriksson. But in this case, I tell you something about how we are going on. Hillevi's lecture is some about half an hour, and that after is about 5 to 8 minutes Raisa's comment, and then re-comments. After that is open discussion, and then you can, all the attendees can make questions, and do this please to chat, and we can choose there if there are really many. I'm sorry we can't maybe read them all, but let's hope we can discuss enough already. And then first, Hillevi, please tell you who you are and start your lecture, please.
Yes, I am, as you can see, I'm a climate and bioenergy specialist at the Swedish Forest Agency, Skogsstyrelsen. And so I'm not a biodiversity specialist, but I've been involved in the work on biodiversity. We have a Swedish environmental goal on forests biodiversity. And we have an extensive evaluation once every 4th year on that. And I participated in that work. So it's merely experiences from that work I will be talking about. And also I will focus a little bit on, in the end, about a certain activity which connects to the second speaker of Raisa Mäkipää's talk on re-wetting of wetlands, because we are working on that right now.
Good. We look forward, and I put this away now.
So now I share my screen, I hope.
Yes, you are now. You have divided your screen.
Yes, and here is the presentation. Yeah. So I will give you some ideas of how we are thinking about what the changing climate means for forest biodiversity protection, which of course in itself is a very big subject. I just wanted to take this as one picture of the background. The present carbon dioxide emissions, or not the present, but the development over the last decades. You can see the development here. I guess many of you are already familiar with this picture. But it is a background to illustrate that we need to not only focus very strongly on how we look at the mitigation work within our countries, but also have a global outlook and see that we have to work together with other countries in formulating what needs to be done. And as you can see, the rest of the world, if you take away India, EU, USA, and China, the rest of the world has climbed up from a quite low position to a very high position when it comes to emissions. And also we need to stop and start to decrease the emissions. And this is just a picture to illustrate the challenge that we have in front of us, that we need to change the energy system and also how we use material in society, what materials we use for building houses, and that also would be a very good thing to reduce the number of cows and other grazing or what do you say, methane emitting animals in the world. So this is what I often talk about, these things, but now I will talk about biodiversity a little bit. And there has been, of course, many large-scale reviews on the effects, what is happening. And two examples of such large-scale reviews are here, that one then for 800 species, mainly arthropods. The average migration of distribution areas northwards has been 1.7 kilometers per year, the average migration. That is one big review study, and another one which focused on butterflies, birds, and alpine plants showed a migration rate of 0.6 kilometers per year. These rates have probably not slowed off. They have probably rather increased in pace over the last decade. And the expected, if we look forward, is that a large percentages of the species we have in the world, up to 50% of bird species and 40% of amphibian and reptile species, are threatened already at a climate change of 2 degrees, the RCP 4.5. And it's easier, of course, for mobile and easily spread species. They can follow climate unless they are dependent on species, other species that lag behind. Typically, plant species take longer time, and trees, as you know, take long time to grow old. So if all those species that are dependent on old trees that is not yet there will have problems. So it is it is a great problem, as you know, and we already have the basic problem of the expanding human activities on taking more and more land into changing natural ecosystems into managed ones, which is the basic problem. So in what we have seen in Sweden, the most obvious example of change is that the migrating birds arrive earlier. I'm positive you have similar experiences in Finland, and it's the Swedish bird monitoring body that has shown this. So that is one example. I think there are many more examples to see when looking at literature, research literature. I know you have examples of butterflies in Finland. I've come across such results. And expected effects is this general migration northwards for many species because of the climate that they are adapted to is moving northwards, and the competition increases from south. So the more and more species that are not adapted to the very strong winter climate can survive to a higher extent. And then also here then we will have problems for species that are dependent on rare biotopes. They will have problems to maybe find enough. It will be too far between the sites, especially for the species that are not mobile and easily spread then. And also the species that are dependent on old broadleaf trees, for example, that haven't yet moved northwards and take longer time. Also because we have this big problem with plant browsing on especially more or less all tree species except spruce. And then also that the migration may not go in the same pace for different species when one maybe is dependent on the other. Also, many other cases that is not old trees all the times. I think researchers have started to see examples of that now. And in the alpine area, we know that 1 degree means that is the climate of about 140 meters altitude. So 1 degree warmer, then you have gone down 140 meters. And since we have had already a 1 degree warming of the climate compared to the climate of 1960 to 1990, already now, it's already so that the vegetation, the biotope zones in the alpine area should have moved upwards 140 meters. And of course, it takes a long time for the trees, especially in that area where it takes that long time to grow old. Takes a long time for the trees to come. But the insects and birds, and they can move much faster and maybe face competition from more southern species then. Also, we will have, we see that in large regions, we will have these drier summers. Here is predicted change in water balance for Sweden for the different seasons. And as you can see, the predicted change for summer, and this is based on where the predicted model predictions of precipitation has been corrected with real rainfall. So I know the model predicted rainfall in Sweden is higher than what is measured. So, and then we get this result about, so you can see the summers that they get is little change or drier in all the country, whereas the winters are wetter in all the country. So the total rainfall precipitation will increase with climate change, is predicted, and has already done so. But summers will still be drier because the higher evapotranspiration. So that means that for many moist dependent species that are dependent on that it doesn't dry out completely in the summer, that some moisture is preserved through the summer. In many biotopes, and they will face a change over time, and it will maybe problems. So what then can be done in our biodiversity protection work to counteract to some degree some of these changes? To start with, to improve the possibilities for northwards migration of distribution zones. It's very important with the general work for biodiversity protection that is now called to improve the green infrastructure, which is the network of the rare biotopes and substrates such as deadwood and other, to increase the frequency of that in the forest landscape. So to continue to work on that and simply have this reason has added to the importance of that work, has added weight. And basically it's to continue to work for a sustainable forest management of the landscape, where we have a network of completely set off areas, adapted forest management in some areas, and in the rest of the forest managed areas also high considerations to preserve dead wood and to preserve old trees and wet moist areas and such. And a good example of this adapted forestry could be to increase the use of continuous cover forestry in moist areas. And then to improve the possibilities for species to actually stay and persist, because even though we have this climate change, is to increase the focus on protection of places with a moister and or cooler climate, and also with an even temperature over the year, such as shadowed places, north-facing cliffs, north-facing depressions in the landscape, such as in the pictures as examples. And then also to put some extra focus on better protection of moist sites, and to protect the moist dependent species. And that means larger protection zones along streams, along wetland areas, around wetlands, small wetlands, small marshes, and cliffs, as we said, natural springs, and other. And continuous cover forestry at sites with moist soils to a higher degree than today. Also then this re-wetting of drained forest soils on peatland is also, it's not only good for climate in many cases, as Raisa will talk more about, it's also an action to protect biodiversity against these drier summers. And it's a question of what will happen with such re-wetted sites in the long term. Will we continue to manage them with some kind of continuous cover forestry, or will most of them be protected land? It's an open question that I think we will talk. And I think you have been doing more thinking on that in Finland. So I'm interested in that discussion. So I just will tell you about re-wetting, the re-wetting activity that has just started. The government has put 77 million euro in a fund, or not in a fund. They have distributed this over 3 years with the biggest sum the first year now, which is a problem, and then almost as big. So it's 35 million euro this year, 32 million euro next year, and about 100 million, 10 million euro, 23. So that we are now working strongly to develop such most of the money has been given to the nature protection, to the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency. But we think we will get also a large part of the money to the Swedish Forest Agency to distribute to forest owners some payment for long-term payment for that we are allowed to re-wet their drained land and put plugs in the ditches, at enough many plugs to bring about a re-wetting of the area. And we have some inventories made over southern Sweden, because the highest climate, the highest gain for the climate per hectare is on the more fertile the peat is, and the further south, as it seems from research and reviews. So we have maps over where we have the peat in the landscape, and we also have maps of what was agriculture land in 50s and 60s, 1950s to 60s and 70s, and which are no longer agriculture land, which have been transferred to forest then. And if we combine these maps, we can find interesting areas. We also have new maps with which have mapped the ditches with some technique, machine learning technique, because so I think it's laser maps that has been they have been analyzed by computers, I can say. So the ditches that we have on, for example, orienteering maps, as you see an example here, we don't have them on the common forest maps, but on these with these techniques, we can find them. And we can also then call landowners and ask them if they are interested in this re-wetting and if it is a fertile enough peat. Yeah, and we're working with technologies to build these plugs in the ditches, and I've been participating in these pilot projects, and it's been a lot of fun. And we have cooperated with the forest owners in this work. So that was the last thing I wanted to say, but really the conclusions or my message when it concerns forest biodiversity protection in a changing climate is summarized on this page. So it's more important with the green infrastructure development to have this higher frequency of biotopes and substrates in the forest landscape. It's improved focus, strengthened focus on protection of places with a moister, cooler climate. And it is better protection of moist sites of all kinds, and also recreation of the moist sites. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much on your very interesting lecture. And now it is Raisa's turn to set some questions to you and some comments, and also the attendees can make some questions, but please do them to the chat and then press a button to all panelists and attendees. Okay, Raisa, are you ready?
Yes, thank you, Hillevi, for nice and informative presentation. It's always good to see what is happening in Sweden, because it's quite different from Finland, I would say, but some similarities, of course, we can find and copy and follow and improve our management practices according to your experiences. But first I want to a bit discuss about biodiversity. You discussed about effects of climate change on migrating birds, and this is obvious observation that the phenologies change. They migrate earlier. But what are the major changes at species level? Do you see new species, invading species in Sweden, or are there some great declines, as we have seen in Finland, great decline in willow tit, which is a small tit occupying mixed stands and needs deciduous trees, decaying deciduous trees, for instance. But do you have similar examples that you see some forest inhabiting species declining rapidly now?
That is beyond. I don't think I haven't heard about any examples of strongly declining forest species, but we have many examples, of course, of coming species. And from my horizon, I merely hear about the species that create problems for forestry. So we have over the last decades, some 20, 30 new forest damaging insects have arrived. Some of them probably due to climate change, and some of them due to increased trade with forest biomass. Yeah, but I think there are also many examples of more southern species coming in, and also expanding. Very rare species in the very south of Sweden are now expanding northwards, which can be seen as they are not as threatened. But maybe you know more actually about if you know examples in Sweden of. I know there are a range of species listed in the red list, listed as threatened by climate. Not so many. I would have thought it would be more because of these complex that I talked about, the problems with the host species and migrating in a different pace, or pushed northwards, you could say, in a different pace than the. So I think with time we will see more and more species listed as threatened by climate change. What do you think so?
I think in our red listed species, we can see those who are affected by forestry, but it's quite difficult to get evidence that some decline is due to climate change. Certainly, it's a factor which is behind decline for some species, but still in our landscape, when it comes to forest management, has so strong influence on everything. So it's difficult to separate effect of climate change from overall influence of forestry. But if we follow something what happens in conservation area, there is area management effect is not there, then we might draw some conclusions. But then you mentioned this increasing number of invading insects who might be harmful to forests. Is that linked to drought and climate change? Do you see that your forests are more vulnerable to new insect outbreaks due to drought seasons? And have you already had serious dry period where you see forest decline somewhere in Sweden?
I haven't actually heard about any new insect that seem to have hit harder because of the drier climate. But we had this dry summer of 2018. It was very dry in Sweden. I think Finland too, right? Yeah. Yes. And we have extreme outbreaks of spruce beetle now. Yeah. And that is the first time that we get this really large-scale outbreaks only due to drought, not having this storm felling first, which creates a lot of good food.
Yeah.
So that is new. And also peat soils have been affected to a high degree. And that is probably because they also get very dry in a dry summer. Because they have a low hydraulic conductivity of water, and they dry out really. Dry peat is really dry, and they don't have deep root systems because of normally high water table. So they have. So that is also an interesting factor when we talk about what to do with peat soils in the coming.
So this is interesting, since so far in Finland we haven't really, we have lots of trained peatlands, and even in those cases we have not seen any drought effect on growth of trees, and maybe we haven't seen such extremes as you have seen in southern Sweden, but that is something what we should follow, because it's evident that there is a risk. Actually, my last question is related to revetting of trained forested peatlands. You emphasize that you have quite significant funding for that, and focus is on fertile peat. And I'm curious to know, what are the criteria, as what you said, how you choose those sites which might be privated, where a forest owner can get support for that activity? Do you already have those criteria, or are you developing
more
those?
or less, and we rely quite a lot on the Finnish research for these conclusions, as you have done so much more than in Sweden, but also, but I should say, on the very fertile soils in southern Sweden, as Sweden go further south than Finland, we have more of the temperate forest zone. And so for those results, we rely on Swedish research, but also other countries further south and western, and also very south of Finland. It seems to be in line with the Finnish results.
In Finland, we see that the fertile trained peatlands, they are emission source. There is a high greenhouse gas emissions from trained fertile peatlands soils, and in extreme case, when you have the most fertile sites, then there is the issue is about biodiversity. We have already lost most of those peatlands, which we call letto or korpi. Anyhow, most fertile open peatlands, they are converted to agricultural soils long time ago, and we have hardly any of those left. And any restoration, revetting of that kind of peatlands would be really valuable contribution. And then we have large areas of spruce dominated, relatively fertile peatlands, and they are high emission sources. And of course, the biodiversity loss is also there. And we don't have any program where we would support the conversion or revetting. Actually, at the moment in Finland, we have subsidies to maintain the ditch network. So further training natural peatlands, it's avoided. But if we have trained peatlands, the maintenance of the ditch network is subsidized. And I hope that this will change in 2 years. But situation now is really dark in comparison to yours.
No, we have had a strong discussion also in Sweden, because we had a work. It was a cooperation between us and the sector, forest sector, mainly the forestry then, on how to increase production. And then they wanted to include, or they did in the end, include also ditch maintenance.
But it's not a profitable way to increase production. According to Finnish studies, we already know that if you want to improve productivity and profitability of the forests, then ash fertilization as such is as efficient method to increase timber production as ditch network maintenance. And on the other hand, we have evaluated economic profitability of the continuous cover forestry versus rotation-based forestry on those spruce-dominated peatlands. And in those cases, continuous cover forestry is more profitable than rotation-based forestry, in case that you don't have subsidies there. But when there is always some subsidies which are focused on tending of the sapling phase and some management activities what you have with rotation-based forestry, they are subsidized, and you won't get any subsidies to continuous cover forestry.
Okay.
So that might still encourage forest owners to go for rotation-based forestry.
Yes, I'm very interested in those references.
Yeah. Anyhow, this profitability study comes from Artti Juutinen, and it's published just now. So it's a really recent paper.
Thank you.
Yeah, these were my 3 kind of questions. Thank you for your presentation.
And thank you for both of you for interesting discourse. And then, okay, that's me again. And now we can start an open discussion. First, I want to also make a appointment at I noticed that the troubles and also good things are quite similar in Sweden and Finland, and also that is also in the discourse of between, for example, forest industry and nature conservationists. Opinions are quite similar also in that, and also the troubles of climate change and also the questions of mitigation is very much similar. That we are quite near, and maybe we have a lot to give to each other if we can open more this discourse. Okay, in chat there is few questions. Maybe it's better I read them first. Okay, there is Dimitris. I believe he's from Sweden. How can conventional forestry practices in Sweden be adjusted in order to increase or minimize the impact of biodiversity? What are companies or forest owners doing on that, and how much more expensive would the harvesting be on continuous cover forest? You can see that so yourself in the chat.
It's quite a big question, of course. How can conventional yes, that's a very big question with a long answer, but it's in so many ways. Then we have all these demands that are written in the Swedish forest law. Some of them are stronger and some are a bit more like recommendations, or that there is a choice. What we expect from the forestry is that they should, when they harvest, when they clear cut harvest especially, they should look at the area and see what is the most valuable features for biodiversity here, and then take extra considerations to those features, whether it's dead wood or wet sites that could be preserved, or like I said, moist special sites like cliffs or depressions. So they should know about what is most valuable in that area to add to this green infrastructure in the landscape. So there is a cooperation between authorities and forestry concerning this green infrastructure development also. Also, we have this certification. More than half, all big companies are certified against FSC, and many private small-scale owners also, and they have also their own certification, PEFC. I think it's a too big question for this. So we'll see what was the end of the how much more expensive would the harvesting be on continuous cover forestry? Yeah, it's continuous cover forestry will be more work intensive over the rotation period. In average, we count that rotation clear cut forestry will be more productive mainly because of the soil site preparation, soil scarification that increases the productivity over many decades ahead. And also the use of plants which have been what do you say, breeding, development, plant, tree breeding, is that the word? Yeah, effect, so that there is the new plants produced in plant that you buy for plantation, they grow better than the trees that the natural genetic, but still they have some genetic variation because that is written in the law. So there is a tree breeding effect, but that could be used also in continuous cover forestry. That you could plant in continuous cover forestry, and you could even do some site preparation, but it will be more work intensive. You are there and thin the forest maybe every 20 years instead of 2 times over a rotation period, and then clear cut 1 or 2 times. Thinning. So that means more work intensive, and then also, so I cannot give you a figure of how much more expensive, but it's not twice as expensive. No. Okay, maybe that is enough on that, but you have to check that with specialists on that. Ask that question further.
Okay, then Tiina Piron is asking that you were mentioning harmful insects brought by biomass trade. How common is that?
Oh, how common. I don't know if you have heard about this. The pine nematode is a really bad insect that has come from, first it came from North America to I think East Asia, and then it has come also to Europe, and it created a lot of damage in East Asia. In North America, it's part of the ecosystem, so it had its enemies. So the trees had defense, but then it has come to Europe, to Portugal, and it has expanded into Spain, and I think maybe also France, at least Spain. And it's really creating big damage. And it needs very long, warm summers to be able to thrive. But since climate change may bring about these summers in some decades, it's a big danger. And in Europe, we have tried to create rules to minimize the risk with that biomass used for example, for wood for transporting things. These wood plates that you have beneath, they should be treated with heat to kill all insects in them. But still, even with those rules that we have in Europe to try and avoid, it has been found in loads from in ships from Southern Europe when I heard it many years ago, it was 12 times in Swedish harbors, this pine nematode. So we have, it is a high risk, but still we have too cold climate for it to thrive. But with a change in climate, it's a big threat. So we need to improve those defense systems somehow. Oh, maybe that.
Yes. Urpo Taskinen is advertising a new film about Swedish forestry called More of Everything.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes, I have seen it. I actually, speaking freely, not as a maybe official, speaking of my own opinion, I should say, I find the messages concerning biodiversity quite correct to a large extent, at least. I've only seen half the film. I saw about the climate issues and the biodiversity issues, and then I didn't see the end because of time limitations. But concerning climate issues, I don't agree with the messages of the film. I think they are. I think they don't look at how societies, the need of material that we have in societies. Of course, we can try and transform our societies to have a lower need of materials, to build less houses. But now we use so much oil for plastics, and we use so much concrete for building houses with a much worse long-term climate footprint than wood, for sure. And when we do use wood for building houses, we can only use as much as around 20% of the tree for that, and then the rest can be used for other things, and we can, for example, replacing products where we use oil, like plastics, and also the rest, about half of the tree will become energy, rest products that can be used for energy purposes, like the bark and the small pieces. And also the rest products that come back from society when we have circulated the fibers as many times as it is reasonable or possible, we can burn the rest. So a large part of the biofuels is really rest products from using this wood for building, and that is definitely much better than using concrete. So the message they try to get out, that bioenergy is as bad as fossil fuels, is definitely not correct. And I hope many of you understand that by heart, really, or by using your basic logic. People have been using wood for energy for as long as we have been able to use fire.
Yes, it's very easy to see the rest of the film by this link which Urpo has left here. I just saw also half of the film just in the morning, and it was really interesting, but it was also nearby exhausting, because it was really rough story about the attitudes and the discourse and policies in Sweden, but I say and promise that it is also just similar in Finland, nearby in everything.
And you should know also that most of the researchers that say things in the film, they don't agree to all messages brought forward. Many of those researchers are very established and have good reputation, but they they don't agree, and it's said also in the end of the film. I've heard that. So if you look at the film carefully, you can see that some of these more biased opinions that are brought forward when it comes to climate, in my, it's only a few voices that, put it that way, and those individuals, in my opinion, they don't have the full picture. I think they are probably sincere with their opinions, but they don't look at the full picture.
Yeah, but it's really good to start a discussion on these things, and that's always a really good thing. And now we can stop this lecture, or was it there some new questions? There is Urpo's comment. It is not a question about building less houses. The most of the forests are used for short-timed and not circular use. We have an overconsumption in our societies. Do you want to?
We have an overconsumption, yes, but the trees are grown and harvested mainly for producing lumber for houses and other lumber, and then the rest is of the trees. And also, I mean, the thinnings are made to produce big lumber, because if we don't thin the forest, we don't get the bigger trees, and to produce good lumber for building things. So that even though, if you want people to stop using paper and overusing and packaging material, which we really do use a bit too much, I think also, then it's not the thing the first action is not to stop forestry, because that doesn't change things. You have to work with consumption patterns, especially on, I think, on packaging then, because, it's concerning hygienic material, for example, it's difficult to, and also we use far too much plastics in the hygienic tissues today. We should change a lot of that to wood.
Okay, there was also Dimitri saying, I agree with Hillevi's opinion on the film. The substitution effect wasn't accounted for at all. But also Urpo says that the scientists were well known in Sweden. And there is one question from Tina Piiroinen. Hillevi also mentioned harmful insects brought by this is already asked. Okay. I believe that is now it's time to change the lecturer, but first we will have 2 minutes cut, and I close the first lesson, and after 2 minutes we will start next. Thank you, Hillevi.
Thank you all, and good question, good discussion. Thank you, and good commenting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Comment.